Okay. Thank you very much, Naomi Klein, for joining us at the School of Architecture. And we're really, really happy that you're able to join us to have a short discussion about your work and about our work, the students' work, who of course are the future generation. And we know that you're really instrumental in engaging the world through your seminal writings and, more importantly, your activism. And we see ourselves, particularly see the students, as those who directly engage with design of the built environment, as landscape architects, which are the majority here, but also urbanists and architects. And actually in the next small hour that we have, we'd like to spend a bit of time talking to you about what you see the potentials of collaboration to change our world, because that's also what we very much want to do. So actually as a start, I would actually like to invite the students to briefly introduce themselves to you. And maybe we can begin with the gentleman on your left.
Is there anything in particular that I should share? Or just besides, my name is Blake, I'm a second, no, I didn't see that. Okay. Sorry. Okay, my name is Blake Weber, and I'm a second year landscape architecture graduate student. And I'm originally from San Francisco.
My name is Tim. I'm a fourth year architecture student, and I'm from Taiwan.
Hi, I'm Tianyi. I'm from Beijing, China. This is my last year in the +2 program in landscape architecture.
Hi, my name is Molly Panzer. I am from Chicago, and I'll be graduating in May in landscape architecture.
My name is Danielle Kaufman, and I'm in my second year of the landscape program, and I'm from Colorado.
Hi, my name is Saquon. I'm also in the second year of the landscape architecture program, and I'm from Maryland.
Hi, I'm Diane Wu. I'm in the first year landscape architecture program, and I'm from Beijing, China.
I'm Teeny Hood. I'm in the second year of the landscape architecture program. I'm originally from Austin, Texas.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Swift. I'm in the first year of the landscape architecture program, and I'm from Los Angeles.
Hi, I'm Sammy. I'm in the first year of landscape, and I'm from Beijing, China.
So, nice to meet you. It's a mixed bunch. And one architect, many landscape architects. But we should just mention that also Tim is an undergraduate. And all the other students are graduate students. So they've all come with very diverse fields before coming to landscape architecture, which makes them so particularly interesting, that they come with a diverse set of backgrounds, ranging from history. Well, you guys can say some of your backgrounds before you came to landscape architecture.
I studied geography and environmental science.
I studied art history.
I studied American history.
And then I studied political science and psychology.
I also studied environmental science.
Anthropology.
Landscape.
Landscape.
Well, maybe I would start off, and then we can jump actually to some of the timeline that we've made. But as I was telling you, for me it's really a pleasure to have you here. Because I've really been following your work for a very long time. As a designer, as a person working, as I said, to change the built world. And for me, your writing really made I'm also very interested in politics. And what I think what you'll start to see in many of the questions that we start to pose to you, we understand that your world is one of writing, one of social activism, one of social conjuring up, trying to push at the kind of precipice we're at in terms of the environment, saying that social movements are where we need to go. I think many of us are in some ways involved in those. We're involved in organizations such as the one that you're on the board of, such as 365.org. But also what was really interesting for me is to start to understand the belief in actually changing and making space. That beyond just becoming politically active, that we can actually design and make space. So when I was working, as I mentioned to you when we were doing our drinks, the work when I was in Sri Lanka, which for me was some of the more, I was there literally days after the tsunami struck. We were involved in a project pre-tsunami when we called our partners and said, we don't think you need us, you need aid workers. And they said, no, please come. And we went, and for me those images, I don't show the photographs I took to anybody, and I don't like to look at them because they were so difficult. And the memories of people coming to me when we were walking along the coast, they're really difficult. And then to see what was happening, as you very pointedly said, the tsunami of, the equally brutal tsunami of what international investors did, of wanting to rebuild the coast not as it was, but as they wanted it to be, was also really difficult to see, to witness. But to me, what became really hopeful was the way that local people, the local fishermen, started reappropriating space afterwards. They started ignoring what the investors told them it had to be. So the power of, and that local architects, local Sinhalese architects, started saying, to hell with you international capitalist investors, we're going to do it differently. And to me that gave hope to our profession. And so the question becomes, in a way, do you believe that over time there can be a resistance by both formal, so the practices that we can do, or the informal, that the kind of communities can do, to overwhelm what you call this prevailing economic machine? Because at one point in the conclusion of your book, you said that, the only way out, the only answer are social movements. Of course, it's strong rhetorics, which makes great writing. But I think for us, we want to see that there can also be designing can be the way out. So would you see that there can be other forms of resistance that aren't just about movements, but also to give hope to our fields?
Yeah. Well, it's a real pleasure to be with you, and I really appreciate all the work you put into preparing for today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about it. I define social movements really broadly, and the way I define them at the end of the book is really not like the level of social engagement we need to change everything as quickly as we need to. Requires a complete breakdown of the barrier between activists and everyone else, and so this isn't about everybody, joining an environmental group and going to a protest. This is about everybody looking at and interrogating their own lives, their own passion, their own skill set, and saying, how can I be part of this project of transformation? So, if you're a healthcare worker, that's one thing. And if you are somebody who has the skills to imagine a transformation of the built environment, I mean, obviously that's incredibly relevant. And I just, want to give you an example from 2 hours ago, or even less. So, I do these speeches on university campuses sometimes, and I realized at a certain point that I wasn't learning enough as I traveled, because I was just going and talking and not listening. And what I love about the work that goes into producing a book like this is it's many years of learning and listening for people's experience. And then you finish and then you just talk a lot. So, that was fine for the first year, but now I'm sort of feeling like I'm ready to refuel. I wanted to learn what was going on in LA as it relates to climate justice, and so this morning first I was at City Hall this morning, and then at noon till 3, I spent time with a group called Stand LA, which is a group fighting neighborhood drilling, neighborhood oil drilling that's taking place right next to residential homes, right next to schools. And there's some drilling that's going on, I don't know if you know this, but like 2 blocks from here, right? So we visited a couple of the drill sites right near USC. And one of them the drilling has been temporarily shut down. It's a company called Alanco, because the health impacts were so bad that Congress got involved, and they would shut down, and now they're going to reopen when they get their house in order, right? So I met with people who've been living right next to to this drill site, and have been dealing with the direct health impacts, asthma, nosebleeds, all the stuff that we've been hearing about Porter Ranch, but this has been going on for years, right? And these are low-income, overwhelmingly Latino neighborhoods. And most people I spoke to needed an interpreter to describe what they were talking about. So I asked them, what does justice look like here? And their first answer was, justice looks like shut it down. Okay, like the justice looks like stop doing the thing that's causing it, right? But then as we continued to talk, they were saying, well, justice would also look like if we were to have this land and be able to use it for community gardening or community renewable energy, right? And one of the organizers said, I know somebody whose husband is an architect, and he said that he would help us draw up some schemes of what this could look like, what we want it to look like. And immediately the mood changed, right? From just like a no to wow, like we could actually say what we want. And I mean, honestly, like when you're working with really disenfranchised communities, like the idea that you could actually have something better, not just have the bad things stop, but actually have something better than right now. And the process of helping people, unleash their imaginations and engage in a process, a participatory process, where it wasn't like, I know what's good for you, but let's dream together, and let's turn it into something that we can actually picture, that is something that we can organize a community, not just in the negative sense of don't do that thing, but wow, like we could have better jobs, we could have clean energy, we could own the energy ourselves, and we could keep the revenues in our community to pay for better schools and all kinds of things. So I feel like you have, and it was amazing, as soon as the idea that you could have somebody with those skills come to that community, it just completely changed. It was completely changed. So I think I would just throw that out there, because it just happened today. But those collaborations are, really when like this interweaving of the yes and the no, because I mean, the truth is people do still have to say no to what they don't want, right? But what feeds these struggles is having a yes to fight for.
Well, as we've mentioned before, we've created a work in progress timeline of climate change to demonstrate what we consider the power of design and design research. And design projects form the center of the timeline, which is in the blue. And it's structured according to what projects we classify as landscape, urbanism, and infrastructure projects. And we've also added lines of world history, media, concepts, and institutions. And this wall shows from 1900 to present day, and then we also have from the Industrial Revolution to 1900. And we see the professions of the built environment as necessary, perhaps more than novel policy that often you mentioned in the book, in your book, and just as much as social movements. Projects can and have throughout history created new interplays of landscape, urbanism, and infrastructure. Do you believe that projects can lead policy just as you think a convergence of diverse constituencies can be a key to the grand push needed for the change of the worldview?
What would be an example of that?
Well, I think almost what you just said, would like demonstrating not only is it helping people dream, but I mean that can apply on a larger scale to shifting policy. And yeah, I think it's basically basically what you just mentioned. I think is.
I guess my question is kind of a follow-up, but we were looking at projects like Copenhagen's bicycle infrastructure and public transportation projects in several Latin American cities where there was a confluence of crisis such as the oil in the 1970s or extreme social injustice, but also a kind of savvy politician who was often educated as an urbanist or an architect. And so we're wondering, do you believe in this, that a politician can really bring transformative reality to cities and countries that actually create the new model for living? So I guess it's related to yours, like how and who can influence policy and the built environment most effectively.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much all of the above, right? You know, the sort of visionary changes in Scandinavia, you know, we look at it now and maybe you think, well, it was just a politician who did that. But, you know, in a lot of cases, or I mean, pretty much every case that I know, there's been social movement pressure that has intersected with, you know, enlightened political leaders. You know, I think we're in an exciting moment where there's more porousness between social movements and politicians. You know, like a lot of people who I know are involved in the Bernie Sanders campaign right now, and a lot of what previously were just, you know, movement policies are now being taken up by presidential candidates. You have DeRay, you know, Maxson from Black Lives Matter running for the mayor of Baltimore. In Spain, the social movement that was basically Spain's version of Occupy Wall Street formed a political party called Podemos, and they are, you know, second in the polls in Spain. They've taken Barcelona and Madrid at the municipal level. You know, I think that this idea of just like, okay, you have the social movements and you have the politicians, I think that was true for a long time. And now there's a lot more just flow between the two, right? But yeah, I mean, you know, in Scandinavia, there was a hugely powerful anti-nuclear movement, which is what pushed the transition to renewable energy in Denmark. But yeah, like the power of the example, like just seeing when you go to Copenhagen, or if you see video of it and see, okay, this is a completely different experience of navigating a city, and the idea that you could bike without taking your life in your hands, you know? Like, wow, why don't we do that? So, I mean, there's no doubt that, you know, at the municipal level, cities inspire each other, and municipal politicians inspire each other and gather, and, you know, best practices spread. But I think you still need that pressure from below in most cases, because there's a counter lobby, right? There's a counter lobby, you know, of the car companies and drivers, and you know, so you do enlighten politicians in favor when you put pressure on them from below, because there's, you know, the vested interests and forces of the status quo are pretty reliably, you know, fighting those enlightened policies. Right?
But do you think that in Latin America it was a little bit different with like people like Jaime Lerner and Curitiba and the mayors in Colombia?
Yeah.
And because there it seems like the social movements maybe came later. And
Yeah,
the like strongman
well.
hero politician was
Yeah.
maybe first.
Yeah, I don't know that history that well. I would be interested
Like
to
the
learn it.
Favela Barrio project in Brazil, and then Curitiba with Jaime Lerner. Like they were kind of real visionary politicians that came with very strong projects. Because I mean, from this project policy side,
it should be able to happen, right? But I would say in the United States, when you have such an incredibly powerful fossil fuel lobby and you've eliminated all barriers to them paying off politicians, it's not the same.
no, I think in the U.S. it's a bit in the kind of West, it's one, but I think the so-called global South it might be slightly.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that's changing a little bit, right? Because, I mean, in Brazil, like, there's huge demonstrations in Brazil, even in
Now,
yeah, previously, but yeah,
before
previously
it
it
was
happened,
kind of
seemingly without
hero
that.
politician and the global, and the movements now are really strong. But I think if you look at some of the really visionary projects that happen in Latin American cities, like the Bogota, I mean, all of Colombia, not like in Medellin, what happened in Bogota, these mayors were, it wasn't coming from below and filtering up. It seemed like it was vice versa.
That is still true. I mean, like,
Now it's
Vancouver,
not.
but I mean, like, Vancouver has a really great mayor. He was elected on a green platform, but I think a lot of the ideas are generated, you know, in City Hall about how to implement it, you know.
Can you speak often of Angelica? Yeah, and you speak often of previous ambassador to the WTO, whose name is Angelica. Yeah, that reason. Notion of Marshall Plan for the Earth. And for us, this is very intriguing. And in the first Marshall Plan was one of recovery for Europe. And we understand our job as a designer is to recover the world's ecologies. And in a higher order, but we are ambitious. And do you see the rubber balance of our age potentially contributing to large-scale projects such as the Iowa Dam? As we can see, I'm not on this timeline.
Yes.
Yeah, it's in another.
No, it's there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, it's there. We can see on the timeline. And do you see these large-scale projects, or rather than having to be of the state, do you see the rubber balance of our age potentially contributing to these large-scale projects, rather than just having to be of the state?
So the question is about the role of private enterprise in this transition. I mean, I think, you know, if you look at somebody like Elon Musk, you know, I mean, obviously he's playing an incredibly, central role in the spread of solar and electric cars. But you still need state, right? I mean, you can have great electric cars, but if you don't have anywhere to charge them, then you've got a problem, and that's a problem right now in LA. I think that there's this sort of like Silicon Valley kind of like it's just about the killer app. It's just about the breakthrough technology that really neglects the role of public infrastructure and what a heavy lift we're talking about when we're talking about reinventing how people move themselves around and how we power our lives. So I don't think there is a precedent for that kind of transformation without an incredibly central role for the public sector. And I tend to highlight that because we live in a time that tends to really underplay that. It's not to say that there isn't a role for private enterprise. There is, and there clearly is. It's driving down prices, and it's a combination. The price of solar is way down, and that's a combination of private innovation and big public sector investments in countries like Germany that we're all benefiting now with cheap solar because they made those big public sector investments. So, I tend to sort of feel like there are enough people out there saying how great private enterprise is in this stage in history, and that there aren't really that many people talking about how important the public sector is. I also think we're talking about new ownership models, right? Where it isn't like centralized state, renewable power. If you look at the transition in Germany, right? You've got all kinds of different ownership structures. You've got big, wind farms. You've got 900 energy cooperatives. You've got, just a huge range of ownership. A lot of it is not based on the sort of centralized state mega dam model, and more the sort of commons model. But the idea of these being essential services that are too important to lead to the profit motive is, in theory, it's something that we recognize. That's why we have electricity utilities, even if we've privatized it, right? But we've lost that sense of it as a public good as the prices have increased.
I think what's interesting about Sami's question is it's not only about new provision of new services and new energy models, but it's by pointing to the LOL dam, I mean, which is the largest dam to be deconstructed, the return, the world's largest river reconstruction. That's the context of that. So it's the largest in the history so far. Hoping that many would follow. So returning ecologies to their natural state, if you can call it natural anymore. But to say, could something like that also become part of a
for-profit?
That is taken up by private sector monies as part of the new commons that's paid for. So in a sense, not just saying that private interest should invest in, that the state doesn't only have to, that also becomes something that's responsibility of private interest and private investment.
Well, it's
something like EPA cleanup sites, where you pay for your destruction, but also that private interest could also start to pay for larger, not only toxic sites, but also bigger commons.
Well, this is a really relevant question right now in LA because of the Porter Ranch gas blowout, right? Which is still happening. I was there yesterday, and for the first time, not only is Governor Brown, like, this has never happened before, where a company is being told that they need to pay for the local cleanup, but that they also are responsible for the global impacts, the climate impacts, right? So I don't think this has ever happened before. I'm actually certain it's never happened before that a company has been held responsible for the emissions related to a disaster. And you could argue that climate change is like an ongoing disaster and we should be applying. That's actually why I visited, because I actually think this is a really important model to be applied across the board. The problem is we're actually seeing the opposite right now, where because the price of oil has dropped so dramatically in the past 18, 20 months now, right? All these coal companies and oil, gas companies are going bankrupt. And even though in theory they were supposed to be responsible for land reclamation, right? And returning the land to the condition it was before. And obviously there's big debates to be had over whether that's possible after you strip mine. So is, like a company like Arch Coal that just declared bankruptcy a few weeks ago, I mean, what happens? And this is the big question now, is the public now just going to get stuck with the bill for cleaning up after all of these coal companies and mining companies that are going bankrupt?
That's an easy way out.
Yeah, so I think it's a really, really relevant question, how we finance the Marshall Plan for Planet Earth in a way that is fair, right? In a way that reflects the responsibility and who has benefited from this model. I think this is going to become more and more of a public debate post-Porter Ranch, and also because the states of New York and California have launched investigations into Exxon, and the fact that they were researching climate change in the 1970s and 80s, and then suppressed that research in much the same way as the tobacco companies. So with the tobacco companies, we have this legal precedent of their profits being used to deal with the impacts of smoking and to convince people not to smoke. That, I think, is what we need. We need oil and gas and coal company to pay for the transition off of fossil fuels in this time of, and public austerity, where, we're told, oh yeah, sure, LA needs public transport. There's no money. There's no money for the charging stations. There's no money for any of the, wonderful ideas that I'm sure you have. So we need to be thinking about different revenue streams right now. Yeah. And they're not going to do it voluntarily. Very important to understand that. They're actually going in the opposite direction. They're trying to renege on what they've already taken on. Not in a big rush to take on new responsibilities.
Right. For my question, I think you already touched some of the aspects from the previous answers. The question is that for indigenous people, they try to protect their environment. Sometimes they lack real political power, as you mentioned in the book, so they need help from outside to make their voice heard. And as landscape architecture and architecture, we have the power to make positive change to the environment, but also sometimes we lack of real political power, like when we try to push for policy change and our promotion is rejected due to economic reasons. Do you think it will be a game changer in the environment if politicians are knowledgeable in the field and passionate about the issue? You mentioned that to make changes we need pressure from below. Do you think is there other ways, like we can influence from the top down?
Well, I think there is this, I don't know how to, it's both. So, I think where I just become a little bit uncomfortable is where, we just kind of, think that it's just about putting forward the good proposal and sort of not looking at these power structures that prevent good ideas from taking place, or prevent, more accurately, going from the best practices, the good example, to to transformation on a scale that would actually lower emissions in a meaningful way. Because I think, we've got lots of great examples to point to, right? And we are in this moment now where, we have like research out of Stanford University, which I mentioned in the book, but I think become more and more important, Mark Jacobson's research about how we could get to 100% renewable for electricity and 100% renewable to the whole economy by 2050 with existing technology. So this constant sort of message that we get that it's just we need some breakthrough technology to help us do it. No, but this is where I think the work that you're doing is really, really relevant. Is that if you have trouble picturing it, and I think that's a really good example where Jacobson is an engineer, right? And you can see what a game changer that becomes. To have not just an engineer, but an engineer at Stanford University, very prestigious, say it's possible. And he's working with community groups across the country, breaking down how does this state get to 100% renewables, localizing the research. I think it's a really good example of engaged scholarship. Understanding that it is not, yes, there's there's the behind the scenes work to be done, there's the academic work to be done, but you have to work with movements that are going to push. So, a lot of his work is with the anti-fracking movement, right? Because they, realized that just saying no to fracking was not going to work because the industry is constantly saying, well, these are the only jobs, existing technology doesn't work, we need this as a bridge fuel. So they come back and said, no, here's the plan, right? I would say that that's I don't know what that looks like for your field. I think that part of it is helping people picture how their quality of life is going to improve, because I think people associate emission reductions with hardship. And they associate it with hardship because this is the messaging they've been bombarded with from the fossil fuel industry, There was this ad that came out a year ago by the American Petroleum Association where it was like, the green groups want us to get off fossil fuels, and then one by one they just kept turning off, your car won't work, your washing machine won't work until suddenly, you're just sitting in the dark. Right? And so that's the scary world. They're telling people, oh well, don't you like your car? Don't you like moving? And so helping people picture another way of moving themselves around that is actually more enjoyable, that improves their quality of life. Pointing out that actually being stuck in traffic, 3 hours a day is actually not making you happy. There's another way to live. This is all people have known, right? So I think that's really important public education work.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question.
It's just that just telling people no is not the answer to solving anything. It's just kind of stopping it for a second. It's not really thinking about how that changes people's lives.
Yeah.
In a more positive.
Yeah, I think that, the people will be really motivated to say no to something that's right in their backyard.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of engaging the broader population, it's going to be, a positive vision, I think. And especially a response to this idea that, well, it's all going to be about losing. Yeah, we are going to lose some conveniences, but we're going to gain a lot of other things. And what does that look like?
So for my question, I have a quote that I pulled from you, so I'm not going to have to read it from here because I've not memorized it. But in your book, you talk about radical changes on the social side as well as on the political, economic, and cultural sides. And what concerns me, is less the mechanics of transition, the shift from brown to green energy, from soul rider cars to mass transit, from sprawling exurbs to dense walkable cities, than power and ideological roadblocks have so far prevented any of these long understood solutions from taking hold on anything close to the scale required. So I guess my question is, and you touched on this both when you first started talking and the last answer to the last question, but it seems, at least from my understanding, that you place design and planning within this realm of mechanics of transition. Do you find that your text diminishes the role and positive influence design can have in the fight or debate between capitalism and the climate? Do you think that design is limited to this category as mechanics of transition? or if you potentially missed an important connection between design and social movements and the power to change worldviews.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, you know, I see it as really central, because I do think we face a crisis of imagination, you know, and helping, you know, helping people be able to see another, you know, see their neighborhood differently, right? You know, it's an incredible gift, and it it makes people more ambitious, right? And also just knowing, well, people were able to do it somewhere else, and here's an example of that. So, you know, I mean, the context in which, you know, that quote appears is just, you know, it's sort of responding to this, like, this claim that it's just sort of like all about something off on the horizon, you know, like it's all that people just don't know how cool solar power can be, you know, and that's what's stopping it at the political level, and I don't think that that is what's stopping it at the political level. I think, you know, we've been dealing with a very, very, in this country in particular, very, very organized campaign of misinformation, you know, a huge problem with the fossil fuel industry being able to have, you know, full access to politicians to lobby and fund their campaigns. And so, and then this ideology that's so much of what the book is about, right? Like why, like, and I do think it's changing. I mean, this is what's the good news, right? Is that, you know, the ideological project that I am arguing is so at odds with the climate crisis. This, you know, in most parts of the world, is called neoliberalism, right? That says, so basically the role of government is just get out of the way of business so that they can pursue profits, and that will trickle down to benefit everybody else. I mean, this is what I grew up with, and this was sold to us with a straight face, right? And I think that, you know, the moment we're in now, and the moment, you know, where you're entering the, you know, the workforce is very, very different, right? I think it's Paul Krugman who calls this, like, it's a zombie ideology in the sense that it still holds power, but it doesn't hold intellectual power in the same way, right? You can barely make the argument, you know, seriously anymore. And the reason why you have a candidate like Bernie Sanders surging in the polls against all, you know, predictions is precisely because the promise of trickle down has crashed. It's manifestly untrue, right? And this is what he says over and over again. The benefits have stayed at the top. They haven't trickled down, right?Ey're not shared. So, you know, I think a big problem we have is that the very idea of planning a city was a dirty word for a long time, right? You're just supposed to step back. And so I think it's an exciting moment where more, you know, there's a greater diversity of voices that are entering the political sphere, and you know, people are willing to talk about planning again, and less afraid, and regulation. But there's still a huge pushback. Yeah, I think it's a really. But you know, it's interesting. I mentioned I was at City Hall today. I was meeting with, so I was invited by a city councilor who read the book and, you know, feels really passionately about climate change. And you know, it was so interesting, like talking to city councilors. You know, this guy the city councilor comes in. I'm not going to use names, and he says, you know, I'm going to have to give up my electric car because there's nowhere to charge it. You're on city council. You know, it was like I'm supposed to do something about this. I recognize that I live in Canada. It's just like this kind of weird learned helplessness, you know. But you know, we had a long talk about you know, transit and you know, subways versus above ground you know, self-driving cars, and you know, it's clear that this, you know, the power of the example he was talking about Tel Aviv, and the fact that they, you know, they seem to have found a way to build transit that's cheaper. You know, so I don't know. I mean, there are people to work with, but it's never underestimate how sort of weirdly powerless elected officials feel if they're not under pressure from below.
I guess going off of what you were saying of the momentum with planning, I think as we're all kind of imagining the kind of work we'll do, we've been really inspired by a lot of unbuilt projects that were actually just kind of on spec, like a Louis Kahn plan for Philadelphia that he just did in his spare time, these really intricate drawings. And like this lily pad project.
Maybe we should point to some of them.
Yeah, like Bannerwood.
It would be nice for Naomi to begin to, and we can afterwards, because we will have some time there, and we can send you all of this. It's 1950.
That's what you're doing now. Right. This was Louis. So this was like a new form for the city of Philadelphia that was inspired by the flow of water. And this was like totally not asked for. And then,
just as the car was coming up.
So this was, sorry, what am I saying here?
Do you want me to do this?
Yeah.
So Louis Kahn was an immigrant from Estonia. He's one of the great, he's considered a great architect. He's like one of the top modern architects, known worldwide. So Philadelphia became his adopted home. And during the 50s, when the car was just taking the route to North America, he became very disgruntled that the car was really in the middle of the city. And so during his spare time, for the space of 3 years, he started drawing, so uncommissioned, but just as a kind of utopian city. He drew a whole series of plans of like Philadelphia as it was and Philadelphia as he wanted it to be. But rerouting the car. So he also writes about all of his projects almost as little poems. And he started writing about the city of Philadelphia as a landscape. And all of these, when you should look at this plan later, is all little arrows. So the flows of the city in the before drawing were kind of chaotic and they were all congested. And the way he did it is he imagined them as being rivers and that he would make the rivers flowing more freely and more beautifully. And at the perimeter, he would create little dams that would block the flows and they would become parking areas. And then they would have areas that would create plazas and more spaces for people, and we try to create more common space and open space for people, and to create more division between car, just as the car was coming in to the society, post-war idea. So these kinds of things, there were other ones, but that was, there were a few architects and landscape architects who were doing these visionary projects. But
what were some of the unbuilt projects?
The lily pad one is, do you want to point to that one? It's 2008. This was an imagination for post-sea level rise, self-contained city, exploding, totally self-sustainable, and
maybe just for some point to it, because it's hard to. Sorry to make you moving.
Yeah. It's actually nice. It's just so I think with these unbuilt projects, there are some that are on this really huge scale, and there's like the kind of the activist work that you were talking about from today, of like just being a voice to movements and neighborhoods that need to be able to imagine another thing. And then there's the kind of architects and urbanists who are in politics and they're pushing a vision that way. Besides that, have you seen or do you imagine another kind of way for us as designers and urbanists to engage and push forward change? Because like everyone else, we are in the system and when we're working, we're paid to do the projects that people deem profitable or valuable enough.
Well, I mean, I think it is really about, it's about getting bigger scale now. Then, yeah, it's not just about the neighborhood project. I think that's it's an important thing to do, but it's, it's that getting people to imagine how you can scale that in a way that brings us to 100%. Very, very quickly. And, the scale thing is interesting, right? Because, I mean, when you say scale, people imagine, okay, well, we'll take the small thing in the neighborhood and we'll make it really, really big, as opposed to, a network of small, right? So what would, what could roll out small fast enough to have a big impact, right, is sometimes what's needed. I don't think it's just small that we need, but I think it's sort of a myth that we need to, that everything needs to be big and centralized. And you know, I think where you see passion, and certainly where I've seen passion in my research is, you know, when people have a sense of control over their environment, right? You know, and they get incredibly excited about local agriculture, local farmers markets, and relocalizing their food system and their energy system. So, so the question is, you know, how do you do small in, you know, such a way to have big impact? And in terms of how you get work doing that, you know, I mean, this is where I think it does intersect with policy, you know, because, you know, some of it's, you know, a lot of it is not going to be in the private sector. Some of it will be, but some of it will be hybrid. I mean, maybe, but I think you guys would probably know better than me about what examples there are out there. I mean, you know, in this country, right? Because I think in Europe, there's a lot more public money, right?
There's a lot more.
Yeah, yeah.
They believe they invest in the public realm.
You know, and this is the thing, is like, this is why my sort of central message is we're not going to win unless we engage in a battle of ideas, right? And we can't just go like we're stuck with this emaciated public sphere. It just can't be, you know. And, you know, this is why I think it's, you know, for me, it's been really, I spent a lot of time studying how we ended up with this idea that we could wage war on the public sphere. And that was, you know, a war of ideas that was waged by a fairly, you know, small group of people with very deep pockets. There's a new book about this out by Jane Mayer, who's a New Yorker investigative reporter. It's called Dark Money, about the Koch brothers. But it's not just about the Koch brothers, it's about the whole intellectual, you know, seeding of this idea that anything public, anything collective is sinister, and also the way it's influenced academia. I'm in a chapter now about, you know, how they changed U.S. academia. But I think what's important about this is to understand this is a relatively new phenomenon. You know, this is, you know, I know you guys are, you know, in your 20s, so, you know, 40 years seems long, but, you know, in the history of ideas, it's pretty recent, you know. And it can swing back. And that set of ideas is in crisis. We are not on the upswing, we're on the downswing, you know. So, you know, it's fertile ground to, you know, to put other ideas out there. You know, and I don't think it is just about returning to the 1960s or, you know, the 1950s. It's about, you know, it's about reimagining that.
So you touched a lot, you talked a lot already about sort of the small scale project and the small scale public space, but we typically are very optimistic, and I know in our studio work, Kelly's always encouraging us. She'll be like, oh, what's this land over here? And we're like, oh, that's offsite. She's like, take it all. So we're always trying to sort of stretch the boundaries of what we can do. Do you think that, and we talked a little bit about sort of the political, socioeconomic spheres sort of returning their gaze to this public realm, but do you think that there's the chance for sort of the creation of large new systems, large park systems, or large, like new preserves, for example? Do you think that that's a realistic hope? Do you think, and how, if so, like how can we go about helping that change?
Well, I think part of it is like, you know, there's a jobs crisis, there's an inequality crisis. So I think that it's about connecting your work to the things that people are passionate about, right? And, you know, that work of land reclamation and remediation and, you know, natural carbon sinks and, you know, that is job creation, and they're good jobs, and they're jobs that people are proud of. And so I think it is, I could imagine it but you know, you know, I think it isn't. It's not an argument that you're going to win on just environmental grounds, right? I think it's an argument that will be won if it's connected to areas of great passion, like the need for good jobs that pay a living wage. And so that might not be how you think of it. You know, you're thinking about it from a landscape perspective. But I think that, you know, the only way we get to those big projects, which we need, is if they're brought together. And there's, you know, there's good examples of that on the Gulf Coast, and you know, you know, in areas where there's such a great dependence on oil and gas for jobs, right? That there's no way you're going to be able to make an argument about coastal restoration,
right?
Unless you're talking about jobs. So, you know, I would look at some of that as some good examples. It's just by necessity, you know, it's just a no-starter if you're not talking about jobs.
In your book, you speak about the need to reinvest in the commons, which have been neglected for private interests and growth in that sector. And just today, we spoke about how in Germany and in Europe there is money in the public sector. I was wondering if in your travels you noticed any leaders in that reinvestment in the commons, and if so, like what stood out to you about them? And is there anything that links these areas that are investing in the commons with each other that can be, well, as a takeaway for other countries, other places?
I mean, I'm always inspired by Copenhagen, and you know, so there, you know, we have a film that just came out, and so we spent a fair bit of time in Scandinavia recently, and it's just, I mean, it's so incredibly, the attitude towards the built environment is so different. Not just from an environmental perspective, but also, like, you know, I have a little kid, and you know, I was traveling with him, and it was so incredibly thoughtful in terms of, you know, what does it mean to, you know, have a toddler, and how do we make life easier instead of more difficult, you know, at every turn. Yeah, so reinvestment, examples of reinvestment in the commons. You know, like we're going through something right now with where I live in Canada, where we're sort of in a similar place to where the U.S. was in 2008 when the financial markets collapsed because of the price of oil dropping. You know, we're having a financial crisis in Canada because our economy is pegged so tightly to the price of oil. The price of oil collapsed, tar sands are contracting. So there's going to be this big stimulus bill that's being put forward, but you know, we're sort of on the verge of making the same mistakes as were made in 2008, where it's all just about speed, right? So it's like we just want to move money through the economy, so we need shovel-ready projects, right? So shovel-ready projects are projects that are, you know, the easiest ones. So that's just rebuilding highways and bridges, and you're just reinforcing, you know, a failing system, and it takes longer to, you know, to reimagine, right? So I think a lot of it is about sort of having ideas ready for those moments when, you know, suddenly there's money, right? And, you know, we do get those moments, right? So even if it seems like nothing's happening, then all of a sudden, okay, where's a shovel-ready project? Okay, we're going to do it. And you know, even with what's happening now with Porter Ranch, right, for LA. So when I met with the local group yesterday, what they were saying is, okay, so the governor has said that they're responsible for the climate impacts. Well, that can mean that they have to go plant trees somewhere, you know, in another country. We want that to mean that they need to give money for a justice-based transition in the greater Los Angeles area, right? So keep the money here, and it should go to communities that have drilling sites in their backyards. And so that could happen very, very quickly. And then suddenly all of these groups that have been working on this don't have any plans, right? They don't actually know what because it just didn't seem possible for so long, so why have the plans ready? And I've seen this happen a lot, like, like New Orleans, after Katrina, that should have been a moment where it's like, okay, like, right, but, and then New York after Sandy, right? But the problem is, in those moments of crisis, in those moments of disaster, that's the last time people can engage in like visionary planning. So it's really about that slow work of being, getting the plans ready, and then when there are these crises, having the confidence to go like, okay, we know what it should be here instead. I don't think that those are the only moments, but like Germany's energy transition, it was, part of the catalyst was the Fukushima disaster. So it isn't even, like there are these moments of clarity where it's like, okay, we see the system is failing, what can we do? And I think that that's kind of happening. There's a moment happening now in this country between the Porter Ranch disaster and what's going on in Flint, and where things could start moving quickly. So so in terms of examples, so in Canada, I'm really worried about this very sort of ad hoc. Okay, we're just going to like throw money to stimulate the economy, as opposed to how do we do this in a thoughtful way. And the examples that excite me most are, and I write about it a little bit in the book, but now there's projects to bring renewable energy to indigenous communities in the tar sands region, and there's a huge solar project that has opened up in an indigenous community called Little Buffalo, which was the site of one of the worst oil spills in Canadian history, and now they're producing their own solar. They created jobs, and it's just an amazing example. And what we're saying is this should be policy, that First Nations communities should be the first in line to receive federal funding to own and control their own renewable energy projects. So it's like, yes, you need the power of the example, but you also need the policy that you're going to leverage that example to, really move things fast, or else you're just going to have like one pretty example. There's also, I think, morally, it shouldn't be impoverished communities who have to fundraise or take resource money out of other, health, education in order to pay for this. So, we have another example that we're trying to do. We could really use some architects to help us out with this, but they're about to shut down our post office, postal delivery, because they say people don't use the mail anymore, and so there's going to be big layoffs, and this is this is going to start to happen everywhere, right? So the postal union. Our little group, our little This Changes Everything group, we work with the postal union to reimagine the post office as a place that is not just about the mail, but it could be a place where you can charge your electric vehicle. It could be a place where there's somebody who could give advice on how to bring renewable energy to your community. And it's like, why should we give up this very scarce piece of public infrastructure? Besides, you've got the library, but most small communities, you've got the library and the post office, if you're lucky, they haven't shut down the library already, right? And so and they're saying, well, Amazon has replaced the post office, we don't need the post office anymore. Well, then let's rethink the post office,
So I have a question that's kind of more focused on the profession of architects and landscape architects. So within the profession of architects, there are existing kind of green awards and certification systems.
Yes.
Like the LEED, I don't know if you're familiar with LEED, and Living Building Challenge. They recognize projects through certification that honors this level of achievement in areas of green energy savings, whether it's water efficiency, CO2 emissions reduction, improving indoor environmental quality, and stewardship of resources. With these competitive award systems in place, it has become kind of a way for developers and designers to gain recognition and to earn money through achieving high statuses in the green building sector. Many local governments in the US have adopted the LEED program, and they're providing incentives including tax credits, tax breaks, density bonuses, reduced fees, priority or expedited permitting, free or reduced cost technical assistance, and the list goes on and on. So we think it's hopeful that through time, the certification process will be an industry standard in building practices and codes. But in the meantime, what do you think people can do to push the kind of capitalist reward system out in order to kind of welcome the green certification as like the standard or building code of the built environment as a means of social change?
What do you think?
I strongly think that it needs to be a part of building codes across the globe as soon as possible. But I'm just kind of wondering how do we push to get that to that state? Because it is true that the government is providing these incentives and people are trying to achieve these goals as a means for kind of publicizing projects and kind of making more people aware. But at the same time, I also feel like it's kind of going in the wrong direction where you're doing it for the earnings or for the tax credits and how much more money you can bring into the infrastructure that you're building. So maybe it's a question of education, how these kind of, it's not about just earning money, it's kind of looking at the broader sense of how these buildings can help save the environment or help improve the living conditions. It's just kind of like, how do we get the government to change the way that they're imposing these awards to the public?
So you think that it should just be, that they should just have to meet the standards?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many examples of how it starts off being an incentive and eventually that everybody starts doing it. So then why not just include it in the books? Like why are we still...
Why should anyone build to a lower standard?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think the tricky thing is that, you know, when you have an economic downturn, it's the first thing to go. And, you know, we're probably going to have another economic downturn pretty soon. Because the economy continues to tank. So, yeah, I mean, but I mean, at the same time, there's so much leadership coming from architecture, and you know, but the idea of like sort of the best practice as opposed to the idea of, like you said, the example, and then it's supposed to change the whole field, right? But that, you know, that's another example of trickle down not working, right? So if we have those high standards, if we've proven that we can do it, if we've proven that, you know, there are all kinds of benefits, then why not say that you have to meet these standards? I mean, these are debates that you're having inside your profession, you know. And I would imagine that it's very political, like to give up on that award system.
Well, we were talking a little bit before in preparing this that it's also a big difference between North America, or maybe it's even different between US and Canada, but between the United States and Europe. Because a lot of these things that are awarded and kind of contradictory in the sense of the United States, or say a double flush toilet in the United States costs much more than a conventional toilet. In Europe, you can't even find a conventional toilet. The conventional toilet is a double flush toilet, and it's by law that you have. It's not by law, that's the only toilet you can find. And the cheap one, the expensive one, they just, the design is different in terms of the shape, and if it's, you know, how you mount it, if you mount it to the floor, if you mount it to the wall, but they're all by code, by what you're saying too, they all are double flush.
Yeah.
So it's not that to be platinum LEED, you have to pay more to get an eco-friendly toilet. It's just by code. So in the United States, to be eco, you have to pay more for it, which is ridiculous. To receive like a golden star in your head, and then if it will go away, as you say, when the economy crashes. Of course, that's going to go away. You're not going to be able to hang a plaque on your office wall, and you're not going to get the tax. So it's a perverse system because all of the leading technology is more expensive in the United States, where in Europe it's only, and it is the code. So it it's very, very perverse. Because the manufacturers are the same. These things, they are Philips. And so it also has a lot to do, I think, with what you were saying there. It's all these the trade agreements and the difficulty of the trade agreements and the politics involved.
But it's also like it's ideology too in this country where it's like, freedom is like the freedom to have whatever kind of toilet you want. Rand Paul gave a 10-minute speech you should look it up, look up Rand Paul and toilets. It's one of the most unbelievable things, And, when I went to this Heartland conference, which I read about in the book, this climate change denier conference, I just remember this guy, Mark Miranda, who's, he's one of the main spokespeople of this climate change denial movement. And he was screaming about how they're raping our washing machines of power. Who knew that washing machines could be raped? I don't know. But I mean, the equation of freedom with the market choices, right, is so deep and so much, messaging has gone into this equation of nobody can tell you what to buy. Your freedom is your freedom to make those choices, right? It goes back to Milton Friedman going, you vote for the color of your tie. This is democracy, right? So this is why I say, you've got to engage in the battle of ideas. You've got to redefine freedom, freedom is not being stuck in traffic for 2 hours to get to work. Freedom is, freedom is being able to have energy off grid, anybody can say what freedom is. If freedom is the color of your tie, it could be anything, Freedom is, look up Rand Paul and his toilet, because honestly, this really is about freedom, the people who don't have the freedom to open their windows because they're right next to a drilling site. A lot of it's about reframing and language, and you've got to sell it, unfortunately, because we're in a historical moment where a lot of damage has been done to these ideas. Our campaign at 350 is around now is called fossil free, going fossil free. A little attempt to reclaim freedom.
Okay, we have one last question, and then we can maybe take a look at the timeline and then into the reception.
Okay, the last question is, through your career and your travel, you must have seen, witnessed a lot of destructive territories, and there's obvious necessity to repair them. But would you consider ecosystem restoration as a truly viable strategy, or more of a chance for greenwash response that conceals deep and irreparable damage? Would it be a chance for those people to greenwash?
Everything is a chance, but that doesn't mean that the idea is, it doesn't have value. Like I said, ideas are abused, in the Alberta tar sands, which is just the worst place in the world, right, where they've just flayed the earth in this massive area. They have these little restoration sites where they have these tired buffaloes that they have 2 buffaloes in this area, and they're claiming we've restored the land, and it's really ugly, and no, I don't think you can restore land in anything like the timescales that we understand as humans after there's been that kind of violence done to it. And maybe, but I think that encouraging, really what we're talking about, and then in addition to that, their attempts to engage in restoration in order to allow continued pollution somewhere else, and so there's no end of ways for these ideas to be abused. But that said, I think that there's you know, we have a huge amount of work to do to help restore systems, natural systems of regeneration. And yeah, I think using the language of restoration maybe isn't, you know, is problematic because it assumes this ability to return to some pristine state that we can, and maybe we don't even want to, but we can create systems that respect those cycles of regeneration. And I think there's tremendous, you know, hope and joy in that, you know, when people have the possibility to do work where they're, you know, especially like doing work where they're able to fix some of the problems that they've created as workers. Like one of, you know, like I've, you know, met loggers, for instance, who do stream restoration, for instance, right? Where, you know, they know their work like screwed up this salmon stream, and they really, really like the opportunity to be able to, you know, do work restoring that stream, and you know, there's a lot of pride in that. And you know, you're not just healing the land, you're actually healing people, you know, who have had to sort of numb a part of themselves to do a job that they needed to do for money. You know, I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater on restoration, but it's obviously like, you know, it's fraught. Is that fair?
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I also like, yeah, it's funny, like, you know, I live in Canada, as I said, and, you know, we have this incredibly, you know, there's British Columbia, where my family lives, is like, it's just very beautiful, very pristine, a lot of it, and it's got a really, really strong environmental movement. But I live in a city that, you know, like, nobody would swim in the lake. We're on one of the Great Lakes, but nobody would swim in the water, almost nobody. And, you know, just sort of take it, you just turn your back on it. The way the city is built, there's a freeway blocking the lake, so like we kind of ignore the lake because, you know, no one wants to think about the lake, you know, what's going on there. You know, I've thought a lot about, like, you know, just because we've screwed things up pretty badly doesn't mean that we, you know, like, I think we tend to think of like going back, you know, if you want to be connected to nature, you have to go somewhere pristine, you know, you've got to get out of the city and you've got to go to, you know, some perfect wilderness. And, you know, I think the real challenge is how do we connect with nature even where we have screwed it up really badly, you know, and that there's even a greater responsibility to do so. And I had a conversation, I don't think I quoted her in the book, but I had this conversation with this amazing Anishinaabe writer named Leanne Simpson. You could look up an interview I did with her, put it in Yes magazine. She talks a lot about regeneration as a worldview, that it's like the shift from the extractive worldview to a regenerative worldview, which I do quote her in the book talking about this. But, you know, Leanne was saying to me that she often sort of feels like she should just, she's from the same part of Ontario as I'm from, but she says, you know, I've often thought about going and, you know, to somewhere more pristine, but then I always think like, well, just because your mother's sick doesn't mean you don't visit her, you know. Like if she's sick, you should visit her even more. And so she was just sort of talking about what it means to like stay connected to the land and the water even when it's really, really hard.
After 5, we've got a room full of people hopefully waiting for us for reception. So I think it's really great. I know I feel a lot from shows.
Yeah, you guys have put so much thought into this, and you know, this is your area, mine. But that's, you know, one of the things that I most, you know, looked forward to when I was writing the book. Even though it's a, you know, big long book, you know, there's so much more that could have been in there, and you know, the most exciting part since the book's come out is when people start reading it and adding to it, like adding their expertise, and you know, this is a lifelong conversation.
We look forward to your next book.
I look forward to yours.
Actually, we do have. Do you like books?
I do like books.
Can you do a series of books that are related?
Yes.
From landscape architecture.
Yeah, I know you guys do heavy books. books
But
though.
would you like them to send?
Yeah, could I send it? Yeah, just because I'm traveling once.
Oh, that's what I would call it.
Yeah, that'd
But
be
maybe you
great.
can
I
show
love
it to
that.
you and then-
But you guys,
But
maybe this
but
will
actually,
turn into a book
maybe,
eventually. I mean, also like, I think that'd be a great book of, you know, unbuilt plans.
Well, this is something,
Yeah.
because some of these are built, maybe we can spend, because I do want to go over, but maybe we can spend a few minutes to just, if you guys could just start before, because they've also put a few projects pre-1750, so maybe you can just spend 5 minutes and maybe you can actually stand up and look at it and show Naomi what this is actually about, to look at some of the images. I mean, we're going to correct some spelling and then we'll send it to you. So Danielle, maybe you can walk through this. This is a collection effort, but Danielle has actually assembled it. But everybody has worked on composing, gathering information. But maybe just quickly go through.
Sure. So we started out, we were beginning the timeline of the Industrial Revolution, but we thought it was really important to include these kind of settlement structures that happened in partnership with the land and that are really inspiring to us in the way that they are informed by the environment and they seem to be built and designed and creating this kind of harmonious world. And so we began, I guess, 7,500 BCE. And then we just moved along, and so we were researching different concepts and moments in history that deal with climate change and the Industrial Revolution, and thinking about, or kind of researching how different urbanists and architects and landscape architects were informed by these world events and how they thought about the environment, were thinking about the environment. And it's interesting because as you go through the timeline, it's like the forms start to really change, I think. Do you want to add anything?
I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of the unbuilt or like particularly imaginative projects are closely related to tying like agriculture, you know, all self-contained and sustainable communities and how you can do that and still have a successful economy. And yeah, I think that you see that in the Broad Acre City by Frank Wright, and the more current example that Taylor or Tiffany mentioned, the lily pad, and then some of the Japanese designs from the 60s and the metabolist movement. And so I think that's a strong pattern that we discovered and then that we observed. Yeah, and it's I mean, there's a lot of text about ideas and I think we unfortunately found sometimes there were whole periods where we couldn't exactly find a great project, for example, of doing what everyone is talking about and hoping for, but there are some exciting projects more currently, like in Japan, they're doing solar energy and agriculture, layering energy systems. And in Paris, they just did the whole competition for new urban development, new urbanism.
There was the mayor in 2014 sponsored a project to develop 23 sites for dense new housing, and they just announced the winners yesterday. So there's the last project in the timeline is one of the 23. So that's kind of exciting, of urban densification in the city center. And they all actually had like renewable energy, urban agriculture integrated in the projects.
I think the housing, that's one we constantly talk about, like high density but low rise, but you don't really find very many examples of that, and so I think that's, or built examples that. And so that's with the population growing, housing is a huge issue. So it's, I think, an area to watch in architecture and design, especially. But
Wow. This is really exciting. Really exciting.
And the idea is we'll still, maybe before we send it to Naomi, we plan to we'll put on the media part, we'll put a few more covers of books, and a few more stills from films. The idea is to kind of fill that up a bit more.
Really, really cool.
So they did an amazing amount of work in a very short time, because the idea for this came a bit late. So just before we run, we wanted to see if you would mind if we all stand in front of this and take a picture.
Of course.